Progress.
Good evening and welcome to the February 3rd, 2026 meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board. I'm Janet Hanson, Chair of the Board, and I am calling this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Hanson?
Present.
Vice Chair Bachman?
Present.
Member Hare?
Present.
Member Moods, who did call in advance of his absence today. Member Nessa?
Here.
Member Mashka Hitzell?
Here.
And Member McCready.
Present.
We have 6 present. We do have a quorum.
Okay. May we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
The agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board and on the west side of Council Chambers, and also at the Planning Department counter in accordance with the city's policies.
Okay. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda, including requests to move any items on the consent calendar for discussion? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Both of us.
I need one.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Board Member McCready and a second by Board Member Payanesa. Is there any discussion? And seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Do I state there's one absence or just leave it at that? Okay. Moving on to public comments. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There'll be 3 minutes to sign for each speaker, and testimony on the public hearings on tonight's agenda will be taken during the time of that hearing item. So I don't have any speaker slips filled out from the audience for public comment. Is there anyone online?
No one's raised their hand.
Okay. So we're.
Oh. No, we did raise their hand. Joseph. We do actually have somebody who raised their hand just now at the last moment, so I will.
Allow them to speak. 3 minutes.
Joseph, I see that you have your hand raised. Do you have public comment to offer?
No, I apologize. I was just raising my hand that you asked if anybody was online, and I just wanted to.
Okay, great. Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will close the public comment period and move on to the next item, which is the consent calendar. One item is on the consent calendar, which is...
Mute video.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. We have the draft minutes from the January 6th, 2026 meeting. Does anyone have any edits or comments? Yes, Board Member Hare.
Yes, under item 2, public hearing A, there was a motion made, but I don't see any resolution as with others where the motion made, seconded, but ayes, noes, etc. I think it's an omission.
On 2A?
Yes, 2A, under public hearings, in other words, which was the Sagewood Homeowners Association designation. It just says the motion was made, but it doesn't say exactly whether it was actually passed.
I have seconded by Board Member Marusi to recommend a resolution for HSPV number 166 that the City Council designate Sagewood condominiums as a historic district.
I have that, but also if you look under 4A, you have the ayes and the noes recorded.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, got
Be sure
it.
to add that back. Thank you.
That makes sense. Anyone else? I just have one comment under discussion item 5A. There was just one sentence that I thought was maybe a little bit confusing. Chair Hansen and Vice Chair Bachman agreed to working with staff on a draft technical assistance brief regarding design suggestions for properties within potential historic districts. This is my recommendation. And I guess you could add for use as a community resource to the end of that, which was already in that sentence. I could give you that afterwards too if you want. Okay. So, may I have a motion to approve the January 2026 meetings on the consent calendar?
I so move.
And we have a second?
A second.
All right, so we have a motion by Board Member Hare and a second by Board Member Bachman. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right, next we're moving on to public hearing items. The first item is the city-initiated application for historic designation of the Hal Forest residence located at 608 South Indian Trail, APN number 508-152-001, case number HSPB 175. May we have the staff report, please? Sarah, did you want to just mention about, okay.
So just really quickly before I start the staff presentation, as you can see, we are using the audio system that's in the room. So if you can please be cognizant of when you are speaking, please be sure to take turns so that we are not speaking on top of each other so that there's clarity in the recording. All right. With that, I'll go ahead and start the staff presentation for the first public hearing item that's before the board this evening. This is the property address 608 South Indian Trail. Based on the Historic Resources Report, this property has been identified as the Hal Forest residence after the first owner's name. The application that is before the board is to review the commissioned historic resources report completed by GPA and determine if the site meets the criteria for historic site designation. The board had previously conducted a site visit for this property back in November when it came before the board as a Class 3 major alteration. This is a street view of the home as seen from Indian Trail, where you are able to see the forms of the home and the rock wall that have been constructed around the residence. And just to quickly recap the review process, HSPB saw this request as a major Class 3 major alteration, again back in November, and made the decision to stay the request and direct staff to pursue the historic designation proceedings for this site. With the completion of the Historic Resources Report, an application for potential designation is before the board today for review and for recommendation. So the report identified the period of significance for the site as a period from 1937 through 1943, which coincides with the ownership of Hal Forest. The home was completed in the period between the wars, and it is an intact example of Spanish colonial revival style from that era. The report clarifies that this home was designed by the locally recognized firm Brewster and Benedict, and the detailed research on Hal Forest also concluded that it met criterion 2. Hal Forest was an influential comic strip artist from the 20s and 30s and was best known for his work in the series Tailspin Tommy. I think that was pretty detailed in the report. The research shows that this was his vacation residence during the height of his career, and this style of architecture constructed during the Depression era of Palm Springs was a tangible example of how Palm Springs had established itself as a favored location for the entertainment industry in Hollywood, despite the economic downturn that was seen everywhere else. This information was detailed in the context statement and the context reports for the city. Before the rise of the mid-century modern form of architecture in Palm Springs, Spanish colonial revival was one of the most and more popular architectural styles seen for residential development during this time. As highlighted in this slide, criterions 2, 3, and 5 are met based on the research that was provided in the report. Looking at the existing integrity of the site, permit information does indicate there have been some exterior changes made to the home. This does include the enclosure of the garage. However, a large majority of the building footprint and the design appears to remain intact, and many key components like the original windows and the location and the association remains extant. The level of integrity found on the site accomplishes what it needs to do in supporting the historic criterion that was identified. Again, in more detail, the character-defining features of the home were clearly noted in the report and listed as part of the review process. It's also listed in the draft resolution that is before you today. In this list, you can see architectural features, historic materials are all called out. The asymmetrical massing of the home that spans 2 stories is a unique trait. The placement of the home on the site also shows how the design responds to the surrounding homes, yet provides an area for privacy that is internal to the lot. The stone walls that you saw around the perimeter of the site are also identified as an original feature. Some of the non-original elements did include areas where windows appear to have been replaced in a few areas. A concrete hardscaping around and near the patio and the automobile court that's out front. Again, the detailed list of the character-defining features and the non-contributing elements are listed in your draft resolution. So based on the findings of the report and the integrity assessment of the home, as seen today, 608 South Indian Trail, or known as, or also called out as Hal Forest's residence, meets the requirements to be reclassified as a Class 1 historic site. The owners of the home have been made aware of the designation proceedings in the process, but the application for designation is a city-initiated application. Given the results of the research and the site conditions, staff does recommend that the site be reclassified as a Class 1 site to further expand the inventory with important resources from this era. I believe the owner's representative is joining us virtually, so if you have any questions for the owner's rep, they're available. And if you have any questions about the staff report, also available to answer questions.
All right, thank you for your report. Do any board members have questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Yes, Board Member Bachman.
Question, the original property is now 3 brought together, so we're just concerned with the original property and what happens on the other 2.
Correct.
The future is not our concern.
So if the owners decide to merge the lots, then it would be under a single parcel, and the entire parcel would be historic. Right now, we're evaluating just the parcel with the resource, so with the house.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, Board Member Panis.
So, excuse me, depending on how this hearing goes today, what effect does that have on their application for a permit to do the remodel?
So if there is a recommendation for designation from this body, then their next step is City Council as a public hearing. And then after the designation proceedings are finalized, and if it is designated a Class 1 site, the applicant may submit for a certificate of appropriateness for any subsequent exterior changes, and that would be reviewed under the criteria for alterations to a historic site. So that
would come back to us.
So in this instance, if their scope continues to trigger major alteration, then yes, that would come back before the board. If there's a change in scope where it is minor and can be processed at a staff level. It would still be an application, but that is a possibility unless it's elevated to the board level review.
Thank you.
Any other board members have questions for staff? Okay, I think there's no one here from the applicant team in the audience, is that correct? So we have online, the applicant's representative, or, and is the consultant online as well? I don't know.
The consultant is not on.
Okay.
For the report, no.
Yeah, okay. Well, then let's see if they want to provide any comments or just be available to answer questions.
Yes, hi, I'm Anthony Stark with Corsini Stark Architects. We're the architect for the client for this project. And I'm certainly here just for any questions. I'm not sure if one of the owners might be on, but I'm here for any questions.
Do any board members have questions for the applicant's representative, the architect? No? Yes, board member here.
I'm just curious what the owner's position is on the recommendation to make this a Class 1 historic site.
Yeah, and I've spoken with them about this. Obviously, they were aware of the story of this house when they bought it, and that was certainly a big reason of why they were intrigued by the property and the house. So they certainly understand the history of it, and they've always said they wanted to be good community members in the future, and as they grow their family in this house. So I would assume that they would want to would support it at this point. I mean, obviously, I think they want to also have the house for how they live, but they also understand that it has a huge story to it.
Thank you.
Is there any owner online or?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Then, seeing no further questions of staff or the applicant's representative, I will open a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? I do not have a speaker card for anyone filled out for this item, so I'm assuming no? And is there anyone online from the public that would like to speak on the item?
No one has raised their hand.
All right. Seeing no further speakers, I will close the public hearing. Now the action is with the board. Are there any comments or further discussion? I just wanted to make the point that I thought that the consultant report prepared by GPA, Galvin Preservation Associates, was an excellent report. It was very thorough, and their list of contributing and non-contributing features, I can't even add to that. So appreciate the quality of the work that they did for this nomination. Anyone else? Right. Seeing no further discussion, may I have a motion?
Sure.
Board Member Hare.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that pursue, I don't actually have all of this information here.
You want the report, staff resignation?
I guess, yes, that would be great. Oh, thank you. Yes, I would like to move that we adopt resolution HSPB number 175 to recommend that the city council designate the Howe Forest Residence a historic class 1 site, HPSB number 175, APN 508-152-001, for a class 1 historic site.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Seeing none. No discussion, sorry. Didn't ask for discussion first. Okay, so we have a motion by Board Member Hare, a second by Board Member Payanesa. Any last minute discussions here before we? All right, well, I will call the question.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
For that motion, could we also make sure that that last sentence related to the CEQA determination is also listed?
Oh, yeah, I omitted that on purpose, and a determination pursuant to CEQA that this action is not a project.
I will still second.
So we have, again, a motion by Board Member Hare, a second by Member Payanesa. Discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right. The second public hearing tonight is HSPV 171, an application for Class 1 designation of the Edmund Goulding residence located at 1752 Ridge Road, APN number 513-352-002. Staff report, please.
The next application for a public hearing is a historic site designation application. It's an owner-initiated application for 1752 Ridge Road, HSPV 171. On this parcel, there are 2 habitable structures and a pool pavilion at the base of the property. This is a hillside property that was first developed in the 1920s by the developer Edmund Fulford, with the vision of this area being a high-end residential community in Spanish colonial revival style of architecture. While the report does address a large compound of a development and the development of the compound that's associated with the director, Edmund Goulding, the request for Class 1 designation that is being heard by the board this evening is for the property addressed 1752 Ridge Road. This photograph was taken on the site that is in the pool area looking westward. This is the rear of the property with the mountains in the background and the rock terrace garden system that you can see below. And the details of the primary home, the detached guest house, you can also see located to the right of that photograph. The view also gives you a clear idea of the mass and form of the structures and how they are organized on the site with the rock terrace feature. The foundations of the structures have been built up with concrete bricks, and wood detailing that appears to be original to the structures can be observed best in this elevation. The design of the home and the materials do blend seamlessly into the natural mountain setting, and the trees and vegetation of the garden terrace add to the landscape design on the site. So the report prepared by Palm Springs Preservation Foundation Stephen Keelan goes into immense detail regarding the history of the period in which the site was developed, the significant owner associated with the property, the architectural style of the structures, and the builders and designers that are associated with the structures and the landscape design. As an early example of residential development in Palm Springs, the history of the site and the integrity of the design do address criterions 1, 2, 3, and 5. The detailed assessment is in the report and the staff findings. But for context, the city was incorporated in 1936, so the buildings themselves were built roughly 8 years prior to the incorporation of the city. So these are certainly exceptional examples of early residential architecture in Palm Springs. The second part is the evaluation of integrity. Based on the 7 integrity findings listed, the location is absolutely intact. The design of the structures and the landscape design are original to what was represented during the site's period of significance. And the materials, although somewhat compromised in terms of its condition, show the original design details and the feeling and association to the period. And the individuals that are associated with the property are also clearly outlined in the report and remain. The surrounding setting has changed from the period of significance in that many new residential homes have been constructed, but the natural setting is largely preserved due to the mountain conditions of the site. And there's a lot of text on these last three slides, or these next three slides, but they do outline the character-defining features identified in the report. These are looking at characteristics specifically associated with the parcel addressed 1752 Ridge Road. The architecture of the primary residence has an asymmetrical composition with gable roof projections that bookend the ends of the building. The wood detailing around the windows, doors, and balconies have a rustic nature, and the rear porch is a key feature that is deep enough to provide enough shade and protection from the desert elements. The rear elevation, unlike the street-facing elevation, has a dramatic scale as it meets the grade on top of that steep slope that it's built on. The adjacent guest house is smaller in scale and takes a shape that is much more modest, but continues to have the same dramatic scale as the structure stretches downward to meet the grade. The materials used on both structures are consistent with the style, and the roof on the building is a simple shed roof with a small overhang in front of the front porch. The landscape design that was part of this application was done by Paul Avery and implemented when Edmund Goulding owned the property. This landscape design does consist of a naturalistic swimming pool. I think that was described in the report as the swimming pool with an irregular shape and the natural outcroppings of the rocks being incorporated into the design. The pool pavilion structure and the terraced garden system that integrates the walking paths that take you from the two structures down to the pool area. The landscape design integrates the natural rock formations into the design and uses desert-appropriate planting palettes. This is Nantucket, a very complicated site with layers of historical significance, as well as a high level of potential, the significance is high, yet potentially compromised in terms of the state of the material integrity. However, the owners of the site have identified the historical significance of this site and initiated this request for designation of 1752 Ridge Road. If designated, they do have plans for restoration as well as new development on the site. And of course, as aforementioned for the other property, if the site were to be designated, new development would need to adhere to the criteria pertaining to historic properties. Since the site appears to meet 4 separate criteria and possess the necessary level of integrity to demonstrate its historical significance, staff does recommend that HSPB designate this a Class 1 site and recommend it to City Council. I believe we have the owner here in the audience as well as the writer of the report, Stephen Keewan.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff?
I do. First off, I found this to be a fascinating property. I would not want to pay to heat that pool. How long do we know how long it's been vacant?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been vacant for a little over a year or two.
I acquired it in July 2024, but prior to that time, nobody's lived in it for 20, 30 years.
It looked like it'd been vacant for a long time.
I think the original owner bought in 1986 or 88, and they used it mainly as a storage. So they were serious hoarders. And she did not want to do a thing to the house. Didn't take care of the landscaping, nothing. So I cleared it out, and now we have a, totally vacant house that needs help.
I'm sorry, for the record, could you state your name?
Shall we come up?
Yes, please.
My name's Lucian.
I'm sorry?
Lucian Wolf. Hello.
I'm Stephen Keelan, Vice President of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation and author of the report.
Mr. Wolf, you're the owner,
Yes,
just to clarify for the record. Okay, do you have some questions for Dr. Vermashka Hijra?
I have a question that's really out of curiosity. This property is amazing, and I really enjoyed reading the report a lot. I'm just curious, are you planning to undertake a complete restoration of it yourself, or?
I am, yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. I love Stephen's report. I've been after this house since 2002. 22 years later, I acquired it. I always knew it was something very, very special. And with Stephen's report, it was one of the most notable houses during the 1930s and the golden age of Hollywood. So I'd like to see it kind of back where it used to be, because it's so unique, and honestly, the views from there are fantastic. And I love the architecture of it. It's like a villa. It's fabulous.
You know, you get these reports, and oftentimes it's enjoyable to do it, but this one was really a delight to research and write. And so many of the Palm Springs homes have these mythological Hollywood connections, and this one, they were all true, and even more. This is where Greta Garbo stayed the night that Camille opened at the Plaza.
Interesting.
So there are so many stories like that. All of European royalty stayed there, Hollywood royalty. I mean, you can imagine what that place has seen. So I'm so thrilled that he's recollected the whole compound over the years. We intended to, we did analysis on all the site. And so our intent was to consider this it's an estate with multiple. He may need to sell off the 2 guest house that are completely dilapidated at some point, but if it's
sorry to interrupt you, are those the properties across the street?
Across the street. So 1752 is the original house. Lucien lives in 1755, which was the primary guest house that he's restored over the years. There have been some minor changes which might make it, I think in here I said class 2. The other 2 I don't think would qualify with, there have been so many poor additions, and some of them are just halfway gone. So if there's a way to include this, because going forward, it's a significant site. I didn't know how to make that so clear in the nomination, but I did an analysis of each structure, so.
My goal is to conjoin the 2 houses, mine's 1755 and 1752. It's a natural for the properties to go together. And I would love to get that waterfall going from the top back down to the pool. And when I, eventually got the house, I said, my God, this pool is like a lake. It looks like a lagoon. And Stephen kind of confirmed, my thoughts on that. And I think with the waterfall coming down and going into that pool, it's designed to be, like a lake. It's fine. And the depth of it is wonderful.
Good luck heating it. So actually, I have 3 questions. Hopefully they're quick and easy. Is this Edmund Golding, the director?
Mm-hmm.
There he is. Okay, great. He's a fascinating character. Do you know when the pool was added?
1936, 37.
Okay, so that's pretty old as well.
It's the second biomorphic pool I've ever been able to identify.
What does that mean, biomorphic?
Biomorphic is a free-form shape, so
it's not a rectangle or a
right.
kidney.
There was one in 1926 that Paul Thien did in Beverly Hills, and both this one and the one of the Goulding are meant to represent a lake or some kind of water feature, where Alvar Aalto did one in 1938. That's referencing biomorphism and Jean Arp and Moreau, and so the kidney shape that we associate with the 50s is based on Alvar Aalto's pool, and that's influenced by modernistic art, where this is a, biomorphic pool, which pools were so expensive because of the handwork involved, and so that's why typically they were, concrete block with plaster, and the amount of money and work it took to do this with the boulders incorporated into the coping and everything, it's incredible.
And halfway down the hill. And then my third was the waterfall that you referenced. Was that natural or was that water pumped up?
It was pumped.
Okay.
There's no water coming from that site naturally.
Because it looked like when we were there were some almost channels.
There are, and you can see them. UCLA has Douglas Fairbanks Jr.'s home movie archive that Lady Sylvia Ashley, his wife, took. And it shows them, they're staying up at 1755, and it shows them walking his Great Dane down. And he and Marlene Dietrich was there that weekend too, and they're in the motor court. But you can see that it's an oasis. There's so much honeysuckle and bird of paradise, and bougainvillea was very lushly planted, white oleander everywhere. So the effect you got from the pool house is the house is sort of levitating over this amount of oleander and these terraced walls that are all the natural granite from the site.
Thank you.
Yes, board member here.
I'd like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed reading the report. It was really well done and over and above what we normally expect or get, but really interesting.
I couldn't
Thank
stop.
And board member Bachman, did you?
What a question. The whole naturalistic hardscape down to the pool, I mean, is that considered a part, maybe Sarah can answer this, of the contributing?
It is.
It is,
It's one of the
yeah.
contributing
And how
features.
do you it's so naturalistic. Is it?
It's completely man-made, but it's meant to
Yeah.
look naturalistic.
So restore it as we see it, more or less, is what would end up happening. It's
They
that
have
rugged
plans.
and,
Yeah, and they have plans that incorporate all of that.
okay.
I think
It's amazing.
the contours of that rock work echo the mountain.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's so naturalistic that it's
It
hard
really
to,
needs to be preserved.
it's hard to gauge what is natural and what was
Yeah.
designed.
Yeah.
That's why it's so artfully done.
It's stunning, yeah, it's great.
Yes, board member Creedy.
It's a stunning house with tremendous potential. As I was standing in the back looking up at the wood, my hope is that, assuming everything goes well, that all of that wood can be kept, restored, because it's in very brittle looking condition. It's
You have
amazing
to
to me
replace
that
the wood.
you'll have to replace it all.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad, because I really like the looks of the old wood.
Well, it would be replaced, like for like, and
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
I had to chuckle when Sarah said, it's somewhat compromised in terms of condition.
You're being kind.
You have a great deal of work ahead.
You should have seen it when I got it.
Do you have a time frame to do all this?
As soon
Has
as
nothing to do with
as soon
that.
as you give me permission.
Terrific.
We've been at this for 18 months. Before I could submit anything, this is the first phase that we got to do. So now that we've got this out of the way, we can go ahead with how to improve.
We were looking at the foundation, which looked to be 2 or 3 feet thick. Were my eyes deceiving me, or is that correct?
No, it has to be that strong. It's, the mountain is coming down,
Right.
and whenever it rains, it all comes down. And I wasn't able to identify an architect, but I suspect it's Paul Williams or someone from Los Angeles, because Edmund Fulford used Williams and some of the, like Wallace Neff and other great architects in this tract in the 20s and 30s.
And the floors, are those original as well?
Those original, yeah. I'd like to see if I can retain as much as I can. But I don't see any cracks or any kind of building problems.
Good.
There are
It's the
issues
organic
inside the living room, with the roof sagging a little bit, which we're going to have to deal with. But apart from that, structurally, it's quite intact.
Thank you.
Disappointed I missed the site visit on this one, for sure.
I'm sure you can
Since-
make an appointment.
I would love to. I'm looking forward to seeing the
anytime.
plans as well.
Anytime.
Yeah.
So I wanted to also acknowledge the quality of the report, and I was really happy that you looked at the entirety of the site even across the street and looked at it as a potential historic district, because that certainly would have been one of my questions. But, you know, the fact that they're all on separate parcels, and I don't know, it makes sense in a lot of ways to do this parcel. But you said the house you live in next door is at 1754?
55.
Okay, so right next door.
It's the
So is there-
primary guest house to this.
So if you're going to sort of keep that and try and, would there be any consideration in the future to expand the boundary to include that property?
I'd very much like to if I can.
Okay. Because I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah,
especially
to me, you know, they both belong
Yeah.
together.
Okay, that would be great. Just-
And that's why I did the analysis for all the
Yes.
structures, because that one would qualify,
Yes.
if not class 1, certainly class 2.
I think that was really important to look at the whole property
Yeah, you know what,
holistically.
when I first got my house, I bought the 2 cottages and my house in 2006. I had no idea, because the middle house is 1755, was so overgrown, I had no concept of what I was in for. I would like to get my house at 1755. We've got to redo all the windows here, but I will probably redo all the windows in my house so that it all matches. There's a few things, you know, that, you know, over the years you expand a little bit. A house is a living, breathing, you know, object, or whatever you want to say about it. And, you know, things change over the years with various owners.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have the 2 marry. So that's my ultimate goal.
Well, thank you for having the courage to take all this on.
I need a full-grown money tree.
And did you, Kurt, did you have a?
I was just wondering, that stretch of ridge is a private road where it becomes dirt? So if you, okay, so if you did incorporate it all, that's still a private lane, separate from the inside the gates, those piers.
I see this as a house, an entertaining house. It was in its day, but, you know, now things are a little different. And I still would like to be able to invite the public in, to be able to have charity events there. Because, you know, why not share what I have?
Great.
And it's what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just going to extend it.
Does anyone, any more questions? All right, thank you. If we
Thank you.
end up with something else, we can call you back up.
Okay.
I think we're good for now. Okay. So, no more questions of the staff or the applicant. We will open the public hearing. I don't have any speaker slips for an audience member on this item, but do we have anyone online who would like to speak during the public comment period?
There are no raised hands.
All right, then I will close the public hearing. Now the action is with the board. Do you have any further discussion?
I'd like to say one more thing. One of the things that I appreciated most about the report was the section that you had included on providing a little bit of a historic context statement for the LGBTQ history of Palm Springs. And that was very fascinating to read, and I think we've discussed it as something that is missing from our official historic context statement. And I think your report shows that history is findable and it does exist in the historic record. Yeah, all the way back, pre-1970, you know, all of that. And I think it is a sad thing that it is missing from our official historic context statement, but I really appreciated reading it in this report, and I'm glad that this designation the designation will mentions that and makes that connection with this property. So yes, thank you.
I was just going to comment that the consultant report, Mr. Keelan referenced all of the criteria, meeting 5, and we have been traditionally not having properties designated under 4 due to the city's interpretation of that criteria as different. So I just wanted to call that out, and did anyone have a issue with not including criterion 4? So it's still going to be designated under 4 criteria, which I think, since I've been on the board, that's probably, this property has been designated under the most criteria, I think, which also attests to its importance. Okay, so we're gonna go with the staff's recommendation on the criteria, omitting 4 as it was recommended in the report. I had just a question on some of the detailing in terms of character defining features, and I know it may be because you didn't know for sure, but it looked to me like the exterior lighting, those sort of lantern lights, were original. You don't think so?
I can't say yes or no, so I didn't include them. They don't appear in the earliest photographs, so.
I mean, they could be old.
Probably old, but unless I know for
Yeah.
sure and can prove it, I'm not going to include it.
So is everybody okay with that?
The same question.
You're good? Okay. All right. Or doors, some of the doors too, exterior doors?
Some of them have been replaced.
Okay. That's probably the safest approach. Don't want to make somebody
You don't want
save
false
something or
history.
replicate something that we don't have evidence of. Any more discussion? Okay. May I have a motion?
I will move, hold on, now I need to pull up the.
Do you want this?
I got it, okay. I move that we close the public hearing and adopt resolution HSPB number 171, a resolution of the Historic Site Preservation Board of the City of Palm Springs, California, to recommend that the city council designate the Edmund Golding residence a historic class 1 site, HSPB number 171, and make a determination pursuant to CEQA that this action is not a project.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Board Member McCready? Okay, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I call the question. I'm sorry, we have a motion by Board Member Hitchcock and a second by Board Member McCready. And again, I'll ask no further discussion. Okay, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations. All right, we are moving on to new business. Under new business, we have a request by the Palm Springs Treatment Center LLC for demolition of the Class 4 site at 2095 North Indian Canyon, case number HDEMO 20260001. Staff report, please.
We have 2 items under new business. The first is a request by the owners at 2095 North Indian Canyon Drive to fully demolish the existing building. Pursuant to section 8.05.130, any request for a full demolition of a class 3 or 4 site requires HSPB review to evaluate if the site meets the necessary criteria to be reclassified as a historic landmark. As seen in this photograph of the property from Villa Escuela, the massing of the building consists of multiple stories. And the aerial view that was shown in the previous slide shows an internal courtyard space with a swimming pool. And the permit records indicate that the building was first constructed in 1956. First as an apartment, later remodeled as a restaurant, but it does appear that there was a housing element that extended throughout the lifetime of this structure. Most recently, the site was used as a treatment center, formerly known as Michael's House Stabilization Center, and the existing building on this half-acre lot has been vacant since 2020. So here are more photographs of the existing conditions found on the site. Since its completion in the 50s, the property has gone through a number of iterations as it pertains to exterior changes. Exterior conditions that you see now don't seem to match one of the postcard photographs that was included in the research. I believe that postcard was dated to 1960. But the internalized courtyard with the swimming pool appears to remain. So there are elements that remain, but for the most part, the exterior materiality of the existing building seems to have been altered. So assessing properties for historic merit requires the site to meet one or more of the listed criteria in a manner that exemplifies exceptional significance. Based on the information provided, the site has undergone many iterations of change, and that the existing building on the site does not seem to exemplify the period in which it was built, nor does it seem to have any associations with important events or individuals as provided in the application supplied by the owner. When assessing the existing integrity, most of the topics related to integrity appear to have been discussed in one form or another. In regards to design or feeling, a lot of these items do not seem to remain on the site. As part of this request, HSPB has two options: to either stay the request for demolition and initiate historic designation proceedings. If you determine that the site appears to possess exceptional historical significance, then this is the route that would be taken. Otherwise, if the HSPB decides that the site no longer retains historical integrity or historical significance, we may decide to take no further action, which would allow the applicant to continue on with their proposed project. Based on the existing evidence that we observed on the site and the detailed historic research that was submitted by the applicant team, staff finds that the property does not meet the necessary criteria to be reclassified as a historic landmark, therefore recommends HSPB take no action. I believe we have the applicant representative on line, joining virtually if you have any questions. I can take any questions regarding the staff report.
Yeah, does anyone have questions of staff on the report before we? Okay, does anyone have any questions for the applicant, or do they want to speak or just be here for questions?
I believe they're here for questions, but.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, the action is on the board. Would anyone like to begin? Do we have a discussion? Are we good to go? I don't have any comments.
I have no comments. I'm good to go.
Okay. All right, no further
If
I'm
good to
sorry.
go means
Make a
that you would
motion.
let it go to be demolished,
Well,
I'd agree.
We need to make a motion.
I will make a motion that we take no further action and refer the permit application to administrative processing.
Second.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Board Member Payanesa and a second by Board Member Moshka Hitchcock. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
All right. Second item is a request for a major alteration to a Class 3 site at 877 West Panorama Road. Case number HDEMO 2025-0013. Staff report, please.
The last item on our agenda tonight is an owner request for a major alteration to a Class 3 site located at 877 West Panorama Road. Class 3 site was identified as a potentially historic resource that was listed with notes alluding to the fact that the site may be associated with John Porter Clark and Frey. The permit records indicate that the home was completed around 1940 in the Little Tuscany neighborhood. As you can see in the aerial view, the irregular shaped lot is also considered a hillside lot. The photographs on this slide show the current conditions, showing stone stacked walls of the residence with a combination of gabled and shed roof forms and mature olive trees. This application was submitted by the owner once informed that the scope of work requesting the demolition of an existing detached garage structure would trigger major alteration review. Pursuant to section 8.05.130, HSPB is to review a site's eligibility for historical designation prior to any major alterations or demolition requests for a Class 3 site. So based on the same criteria we have looked at for the last 3 reviews, historic designation requires a site to meet one or more of the listed criteria. The submitted application consists of permit and historic research conducted by the applicant owner. A site visit was also conducted by the board members and staff to observe and understand the existing conditions. The applicant's research indicates that none of the criteria are met, but additional information confirming that the site does not meet the criterion in an exceptional way may be needed, especially since there was a note associating the site to architects Clark and Frey. But to be clear, just an association to a notable architect doesn't warrant designation. A case needs to be made confirming that this property contributes to their body of work in a meaningful way, or the site possesses high artistic value. This would be the same for the criteria related to historic resources reflecting a period or style of architecture. Comparative information may be necessary to clarify if the site meets those findings. The existing integrity of the site as a resource also needs to be evaluated to determine if the property should be reclassified as a historic landmark site. Again, these are the 7 integrity topics for review. This does include design, location, materials, and association as part of the review process. If the board feels that the site has the potential to meet the findings for historical significance, then they may decide to stay the request for a major alteration and initiate designation proceedings. If they feel that the project does not rise to the level of historic significance based on the information provided, the board may make the decision to take no action and allow the applicant to move forward with their proposed work and obtain the necessary approvals and permits that would be required. As a Class 3 site with a proposed project that scopes major alteration, again, this does require HSPB review. This review would include reviewing the criteria as well as the integrity to determine if a stay would be warranted or if the applicant should be allowed to move forward with their project. With that said, we did receive some additional information this afternoon saying that there's a code case that was open for the site. We don't have any specific details to share at this time. I didn't want to make that quick note because that was an update that we received just not too long ago. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board for any questions, discussion.
Does the board have questions for staff? Board member here.
Could you repeat what the updated information was? I didn't understand that.
So we received notice from the Code Compliance Department saying that there was a case that was open for the site, but we don't have any further details related to what those.
Sometime in the past or now?
Recently. So, yes, so it was recently today, yeah.
Code compliance?
Excuse me. Yeah, I still don't quite understand what that means.
What could that be? Because I don't think any of us are clear on that.
So there's a request, and again, I don't have the full details, but it's to review work on the site related to the code code request. And so it's.
Would that be like if the work is not what was permitted, or I guess I'm grasping at what that means?
Yeah, I think they're trying to assess the condition of the site and the permitting information and all of the work. And so they need to go through that review process. And so we've been told that there was a case that was opened this afternoon. So that's updated information, but I don't have the details to that.
And understanding you don't know precisely what this is, would this have any bearing on our discussion? Or could it?
I think it could. I think it's put kind of out there for you guys to discuss. Unfortunately, I don't have enough information.
No, it's the same thing. How do we evaluate that piece of information, which is no information? Should we somehow table this until we have more information to make the determination if we want to proceed as we thought we were before we got that non-information?
I think that's left to the board to have that
Okay.
discussion. Unfortunately, I don't.
Yeah. Is anyone, we do have a speaker card for, is it Matthew Phillips or Phillips? Did you want to speak on this item?
Yeah, I'm the owner.
Oh, okay.
Before he speaks, can I ask a staff question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Yeah.
you were ready to move on.
So I understand kind of the process on this one. If we were to decide to take no action and refer the permit application to administrative processing, the scope of whatever they want to replace that garage with, does that come back to us?
It would not come to the board for review because only design projects that are designated come to the board.
But is this not designated a 4, or if it's a 1 or a 2?
So it's classified as a class 3,
That's
which
3.
means it's a potential for a historic designation. But unless you're designated a class 1 or 2 site, any design changes don't come before the board.
Okay.
It would qualify for hillside review because it is a hillside lot, and so it may trigger hillside required design review, but that would not be your purview.
All right. Thank you.
Mashka Hitchcock, please.
Yeah, follow-up question to, I suppose, lack of information. How did, because you indicate, or the staff has indicated in the evaluation that that some of the work that, like, for example, the roof and the window replacements was perhaps surprising to staff. How did that happen? Are there permits were there permits issued for that work?
So that's the piece where we don't have additional information, and that goes to a different department to do the research and the review.
That's what the code compliance is about.
Probably, okay. Because minor alterations are for class 3 historic resources are supposed to be reviewed by the historic preservation officer. Even if they don't come directly to us. And did you review permits for or did you don't know whether the historic preservation officer, whether you have reviewed?
So in terms of
permits for this?
Further research, we need to rely on the other departments to confirm the information. As far as the permits are concerned, it could be, because I don't have data, it could have been years ago. So we need them to conduct that research to see where we land on that.
Board Member McCready.
I have a follow-up, sorry. Yeah.
Well, because of the roof and the windows and what they are today, which are probably very different, I suspect, than what they were in 1940, wouldn't that automatically take this out of any possible designation as a historic site, one or two?
Well, I think that's part of an analysis of the property generally. I mean, would be part of the physical integrity of the site, and integrity is relative to why it's significant. So let's say on the previous property that got designated, there was such overwhelming significance to that property completely aside from architecture, and we don't have any information in that regard. So I wouldn't be prepared to say that alone would disqualify something. And I think you're also looking at two extremely important architects, you know, after establishing, you know, their role in this building, John Porter Clark and Albert Frey. So again, we don't, you know, I don't think, in addition to the code compliance case, personally, I don't feel like I got enough information, but I think we do this during the discussion. Let's, if we are done with questions for staff, let's hear from the applicant, and then we can discuss what we think.
I have more staff questions.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yeah, Mashka Hitchcock.
What if the activity on the site was not permitted? What is the consequence for unpermitted activity?
So we would have to we would have to discuss that process with the code compliance department and what their procedures are. We have our own review processes we would look at for potential historic properties, and so it would require a discussion. Not prepared to address what that process would look like.
Okay.
But again, we would need to rely on the actual research that's conducted before we can give you more information.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions we can't really answer tonight. So when we come to our discussion, we can talk about some things, and I have a suggestion for an alternative action. But
I still have, sorry, I just do have one more question, which is the application by the owners that has come before us. In the elements don't have a ton of information when we don't really have a ton of information to make this determination yet. And in our city historic preservation ordinance, if you were reading, it says that the application for demolition or alteration of a class 3 building shall be accompanied by the following items as may be deemed necessary by the HPO, and it lists a large list of things that aren't included in this application. Are those things that staff decided before that were not necessary before, or is that something that we could maybe ask for? For clarification.
More details can be requested as
Okay.
part of the application.
can be or will be? Can be.
Can be.
Okay.
One quick one, hopefully. Did you say this is a Clark and Frey, or you think it's a Clark and Frey?
So we have our class 3 inventory, which was done by a third-party consultant, provides notes related to some of the class 3 sites where there has been associations and research. So in that description, there's reference to Albert Frey and John Porter Clark. The intent of that list is when applications such as a major alteration or a demolition come before us, that further research is done. So we have information that's tying them to the site, but we would need more information
But it's
to
not
make sure
definitive
that the resources are
at this point, anyway.
confirmed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was there a photograph with the class 3 determination in the survey?
I believe there is not in this application, but there's
In the
usually
survey? Because that might be helpful.
There is one online. There's one available online
Okay.
that shows before the current windows and roof are, there is one.
Okay. And that was 2016-ish, so about 10 years ago.
There should be a DPR report
Yeah.
form with the.
Okay. DPR is a survey form that the consultants fill out when they do the survey. So that would be online with the survey. Are we ready to hear from the property owner? Okay, Matthew Phillips. Please come up.
Thank you, Chair Hanson.
Oh, can you come up to the table? Thank you. Have a seat.
Thank you, Chair Hanson. I'd like to start by thanking the HSPB board. Palm Springs is a very special city with a rich architectural history, and part of what makes it so magical is the architecture. Having spoken with many of you, albeit briefly, I can tell there's real passion for the work you do. So I'd like to thank you for your effort and the time you put into it. And Sarah, thank you for all the help you've given us with this process and the many treks up the hill you had to make to meet with us. This home, we've only owned it about a year, so we haven't really had it very long or had the opportunity to do much, but I have spent a lot of time researching it to the best of my ability. It was built as part of the Little Tuscany development, and newspaper articles at the time say that the developer restricted the design to the type of architecture prevalent in Tuscany. And so because of this restriction, the architect that did it would not have been able to express his or her full independent artistic voice or vision. And the home would not really be representative of any architect's unique individual style if they had been unfettered. Notwithstanding the architect, the home has had significant additions, repairs, and alterations throughout its history, and no longer maintains a lot of its original architectural integrity. In April of 1949, there was a fire that took 15 firefighters 2.5 hours to contain and destroyed the entire west wing of the house, doing an estimated $25,000 in damage. The city has 25 pages of building permits on file, including one from 1958 indicating the patio was enclosed to make a bedroom. And in fact, 2 of the bedrooms have different foundations to that of the rest of the house. It's clear today that the house is very different than the one that was originally built, and in many ways more than just the roof and windows. We do consider ourselves fans of architecture. I think almost everyone in Palm Springs does. And when we build a new garage, we want it to be sensitive to the current structure. The plans that we had were submitted by a local architect, but the new garage design was done by Professor Tom Musala, who is both an award-winning architect and a professor of architectural history and theory. 877 is a neat old house, but I don't believe it meets any of the criteria for exceptional historic significance. And we would respectfully ask you to vote to take no action tonight so that we could continue with our project. Thank you very much.
Anyone have questions for the property owner? Yes, Mashka Hitchcock, please.
So why aren't those permits, the 25 permits, included in the application?
I don't know. Our architect submitted them. I don't.
They were submitted to, sorry, I'm Devin Howard, I'm the other homeowner. They were submitted to Sarah Yoon by Roberto over 2 months ago when we did our initial findings, and they were also submitted onto the city portal site as addendums when we initially pulled the permit for this garage process. So they've been submitted since day one.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. I did not see them attached with the application that I had access to prior to the meeting.
Yeah, we're homeowners. This is all new to us. We've been getting a little bit of help, but we did send them over.
So I'm sorry, you were Devin Howard?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to state that for the record.
Did you purchase the home with the windows and roof in this state?
Yeah, we only bought the house a year ago, and so I think you'll have an opportunity to visit the house and see the windows and the roof.
Right, and that's the condition, those are the windows and roof that you purchased the house with?
Yeah.
Okay. And then did you read the list of, were you able to read the list of the designation of the eligible properties in the City Historic Context Statement survey before submitting this application?
I'm not sure which list to which you're referring. I read the list of the 7 criteria.
No, the list that the survey that was done there's a list of all of the properties in Palm Springs that are considered eligible and notes about each one. And this property is specifically called out in that individually and has a whole note on.
And the note is very much cut and paste for every single thing in the neighborhood. It's not really very tailored to that home. 926 Panorama was the first home in that. This wasn't the first home. But most of it is about the Little Tuscany development, not about this particular home, about Alva Hicks, the developer. The only thing that really mentions this home, I think, is just that the reference to Porter.
It does have an individualized statement of significance that calls out the specific quality of design of this home. But yes, the rest of it is rather cut and paste. But it is completed my understanding is it was completed in the first phase of development of this division, however.
It was, and like I'd say, I don't think it looks much like it did then. I think the house has gotten much bigger. Obviously, the 2 bedrooms that have different foundations have been added. So I think that even what it looked like then and what it looks like now are not the same house. And from what I understood, these architects were very prolific in the Valley, and they did a lot of amazing stuff, and then they also did some stuff to, keep the bills paid. But I don't think this really, like, when you look at some of their, or when I'm not an architect, I'm a guy who wants to build a garage, but when I look at some of their, like, really famous stuff, it's really impressive. But it doesn't look like a stone cottage.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's support. It was nice to meet all of you.
Thank you. Okay, are we good?
I have one
Did you-
clarification.
Okay.
So, it does appear that the electronic version did not include the microfilm permit information that was submitted. So we can send that out. This is 25 pages of microfilm information. So this is, I think, the latest date for these permits is 1971. So the microfilm is of a certain period, and then new permit information kind of uses a different set.
So it only goes up to 1971.
That is the information that you received and did not get attached to that electronic submission. Send that as an addendum, but it does not go further than 1971 for this set of information.
Well, can I make is everyone okay if I just make a few comments before we have some discussion? I was, a little bit surprised by this one coming to us because I think some of the issues with the application itself, I just felt like I didn't have enough information, and I'm not sure the building permits would have clarified a lot of that for me. It may give you more information about fire repair, but if there was also a lot of work done without permits, then we're not going to have that anyway. So I just felt like there really wasn't enough information to make a recommendation for a stay of demolition. And I feel like, it might have helped to have a professional report done with, more extensive research. So we have, the first recommendation is to, request, stay the request for up to 120 days, authorize the processing of an application to designate. And then the second is that we take no action and allow the property owner to proceed and remove the property from the class list. But as my understanding is that we may have a third alternative, that we can continue this to another meeting until the code enforcement case is fully researched and we understand what is going on in that regard. And then I believe that if it came back to us, we could still then make that recommendation 1 or 2. So we can continue it, get more information, and then still recommendation number 1 if we decide we would like even more information and a full-on report with the potential to designate, and more research on the architects. So that would be a third option that is still allows us to do the stay of demolition for 120 days. It will obviously take more time. And we don't probably have any idea how long the code enforcement, I don't know how that works in terms of timing for them, if there's any kind of deadline that they have, if there's an open case.
There usually is a time frame that they use. I would have to touch base.
Check with them. So can you clarify if that,
Yeah, I mean, that would be an acceptable or
A
allowable
third
third
alternative.
option. If you determine there's not enough information to support a motion on either of those two options.
unless you feel that the code enforcement information, is not going to give you any more information than you need, other than that some work was done without permits, that there was some observation on, and go to one of recommendation 1 or 2. I think my other question for staff, though, is, and I don't know if you can answer this tonight, or if you would also have to get some more information, which is helpful if we do a continuance. I'm also concerned that, this process that kicks in per the city's ordinance now makes this a discretionary action. And it seems to me that CEQA would now be, the California Environmental Quality Act is invoked, if you will. And if CEQA is involved and work was done without permits under what should have been a discretionary action, what does that mean for us? Because, and I know this was before the property owners purchased the property, but it's basically an illegal action taking place to alter something that could have been a historic resource. Unless, despite the alterations, it still wouldn't have been eligible. We don't have information to make that call, I don't feel, today. So if there can maybe be some clarification on this, the ordinance triggering a discretionary action, which would then trigger CEQA, an assessment of impact to a potential or designated cultural resource. I'm a little confused on the nexus. So, yes, board member.
Assuming we had all that knowledge and there were issues with prior, perhaps violations of lack of permits, how would that impact today what the owners can and cannot do in terms of exterior appearance, roof, windows,
I think
and so
some of
forth?
your questions are a CEQA question that we would, if we get some sort of response from the city attorney, because it just in my experiences over the years, different attorneys may interpret it differently.
If I may, I'm completely simpatico with your feelings of being stymied for lack of information. And I think, having read through and listened to this discussion, that lack of information is probably due to the fact that there is a lack of information. I'm also inclined, after having read through this, to feel that the owner's request is a legitimate one, given that the integrity of this structure has been altered so drastically. Fire, roof, windows, it just doesn't seem to me to fit into a class 1 or even 2 designation. So I'm, as much as I think your compromise option is certainly a good one, I would be very much on the fence support that versus no action.
If I may just say one
Yes.
thing. Certainly not a professional researcher, but our architect has poked around. I've spent as much time on the internet, and I think what the board member says is, I just don't think there's going to be more information. And I think that even going back to when they did the survey at 2016, so much had changed between the house and even then, that it's just not the same house, and it's going to be very, very difficult to even determine what it was originally. I think, you guys, you all do this and I don't, but I think that if you had all the information available, you probably wouldn't have that much more information, and probably not that much more that would change anything, unfortunately.
I think a good researcher, there's aerial photographs, newspaper articles. It takes a while and it's a lot of digging, but typically if you have a building, particularly in that neighborhood, there were probably articles in the newspaper over the years as that was being constructed.
Yeah, and I've been all through the Desert Sun archives, and I believe a bunch of the articles were submitted.
Yeah.
So the only thing I didn't do is like physically go to libraries, but the digital archives, man, I know all about the social lives of these people. I know that the aerial antenna on this house was stolen in 1948. I know more useless stuff about this house. The bridge parties and everything that were covered, but not a lot that's really helpful architecturally.
I guess from my perspective, I appreciate what you said, because I think I'm feeling the same way, that I'm not sure that anything we're going to find out is going to change, kind of the condition of the resource. So, I guess from my perspective, even though there seems to be a lot unknown, I'm not sure that anything's going to change.
With respect, that's why we request more information. And one part of the information that we don't have is how it was, the method or the way that it was altered. And one of the things that is that can be included in an application for demolition or alteration of a Class 3 site is the historic data for the building, including the entire building permit history, and an analysis of the historic integrity, which identifies explicitly additions, previous demolition or alteration work, modifications to the exterior materials and architectural details, or any other modifications to the original building, and that we don't have. And additionally, while I understand the question of this property's historic significance as it relates to the architectural significance of the work of Clark and Frey, they had a very large body of work, and this home and the homes in this neighborhood, to me, reflect a lot of reflect a type of development that was in Palm Springs at this time, that occurred in Palm Springs during this time. Relatively little development occurred during this time, in my understanding. And so part of the issue is that we don't have an evaluation of the comparative rarity of this resource, even in a compromised state within the city. And we have Class 2 designation for a reason. Class 2 designation is for properties that might not meet entire integrity standards, but are considered significant for what any of the reasons that that the criteria. They actually even Class 2 don't even really need to meet exceptional significance, and I think we don't have the information, particularly about the ways in which this has been altered, and the way that Clark and Frey were involved in this development in order to make a determination. So that's information that I would potentially request be included in this application if we do stay it for review.
Board Member McCready. You look like you're on the edge of,
I am on the edge. I understand all of that, and I think all of that's fair on the one hand. And assuming we had all of that, I'm not sure how it would impact the decision about the garage, because we can't go back and request the current owners to make all kinds of changes, I don't think, in terms of permitting or materials or colors or frames or roofs. And I think in a way, are we penalizing the current owners for work that's been done before without their knowledge?
again, we don't know what the results of a code enforcement case is going to be, so we need to, that's a difficult one without that information.
If I may, I'd like to put on my city hat, which hasn't been on for a number of years, to say that one of the things I am cognizant of is budgets and expenditure of funds. And as we did in November, we put a stay. We asked for a consultant to make a report, and tonight we designated a Class 1 site. And that was very important. However, almost any application that comes before us, I'd like more information, and I would like to have a consultant actually do that in a very professional way, but I do not think that that is a wise use of resources when resources are so limited. And in this particular case, I would argue that the preponderance of evidence that we have does not merit a consultant-based research, historic site review. That's kind of where I stand.
Board Member Bach.
Do we know it is a Clark and Frey, or is that speculation?
Again, we're relying on the inventory information that was provided by our third-party consultant. So we can look at the DPR report, DPR form, to see what the sources are, but that would be information we would typically require verification.
So we need that. So if we came more clearly designated that we feel 90% or something that's a Clark and Frey, then it comes down to the integrity.
Well,
Evaluating that, getting information on that if
you only use one criteria.
Yeah.
Right, that's not.
There are multiple
Is there,
criteria.
would we get to a Class 1 or Class 2? Is there a path?
That's what Class 2, I mean, that is what Class 2 is for. And if you read and look, if you're looking at the historic context statement, that the integrity considerations for the properties that the property that this property type falls under, under criterion, the pattern of development or period, architecture, both of them say that a property that has lost some of its historic materials or details can be eligible if it retains the majority of the features that illustrate its style in terms of massing, spatial relationships, proportion and pattern of windows and doors, texture of materials and ornamentation. So it doesn't even necessarily call out the material that they must have the original windows and doors, but that properties can be eligible under these criteria from this period if they retain the pattern of windows and doors. But because we don't have the permits or we don't have the analysis of the integrity, the full analysis of the integrity and what has been changed, we can't make a determination if the patterns of the windows and doors even are retained.
Is it, if it is a Clark and Frey, is that enough to designate it even as a 2? Is everything Clark and Frey
Not
did
just,
worthy?
well, I would say that's what a report would tell you. Comparative analysis.
Something.
Is this the
something
only?
more. It is special enough, because I can't imagine every Clark and Frey is worthy of.
I don't feel like, again, I could make that determination today based
Okay.
on what I saw.
Well, it seems to me that the reference to Clark and Frey is almost ephemeral. It's there, but it doesn't provide any any evidence that it's a fact. And in fact, the staff report sort of leaves it very indistinct.
That's what a report would do.
Yes, no, I know that. But again, if it was a Clark and Frey, I think Member Bachman's
I mean, I don't know.
observation is well taken. Would it necessarily meet the criteria just because of that?
Well, I think Board Member McCready brought that up at the beginning. Isn't already what's been done enough to knock it out?
Well, from the brick wall and the gates, all the way through, and the number of additions you can see when you stand in front of the house, looking, I think, at the original house, which was to the left, to the east, it's all been added onto and changed. I don't know when. So from my perspective, architecturally, it's a combination of, it works together, it's all one story and so forth, but the integrity of the original structure is gone. Who knows what it looks like? Maybe we have a picture somewhere. But that isn't enough for me to stop this because of all the other changes. When I drove up the first time and looked at the brick wall, I thought, oh, what's
Well, that's like
I know.
easy.
There's nothing to do with it. Okay.
I pulled up the DPR on this, and it says that the architect is Clark and Frey, and that the source of the architect was Joseph Rosa from Albert Frey Architecture.
Okay.
So there's a reason that the city invested in a historic resource and invested in a professional to do this research.
It's not conjecture.
It's not conjecture.
It's not conjecture.
This is a Clark and Frey. And we don't, it says, it does list the divided light steel sash casement windows as one of the character defining features, but it also lists one-story sprawling L-shaped plan, low horizontal massing with the wide street facade, low-pitched gable roof with open overhanging eaves. All of those things seem to me to still be present. So I do think, again, this is partly why Class 2 properties exist, Class 2 designations exist, and I definitely think that at least until the code enforcement issue, we have that information, that I would not feel that I had enough information to designate this yes or no. This, yeah.
And I really appreciate that insight. I think when you see the house in person, I think what the board member said, it does all work, but it doesn't necessarily read historical. And the association, I don't think, personally strong enough. So I understand you guys have a job to do and a very important job, but I'm hoping that you'll let us move on.
Are we ready to make a motion?
Sure.
I don't have any
Are we
more
going
comments.
with the three choices, or
I think we go with what the majority wants. If someone wants to make a motion and see what the vote is.
So if I was going to make a motion, which I will, my motion would be to follow the staff recommendation that we take no further action and refer the permit application to administrative processing.
Oh, I'm
And
Sarah.
I would second.
Just to clarify, there was, the staff recommendation was for HSPB to make a.
Yeah, they didn't make that
Yeah.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They gave us both to
All
choose
right, I didn't mean to
from.
blame you.
And then I offered a third, which was to continue this item until we have some more information from the code enforcement case that is active. And then we can still, at another meeting, go back to recommendation 1 or 2. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the issue of potentially needing more information on this property and the history and development outside of the code enforcement case, which if we stay it for code enforcement, we're not going to have that.
My motion would be to stay it or continue it, excuse me, continue it, continue it for the code enforcement and request an evaluation of the integrity of the property.
Who's gonna do that, though?
Well, it's something that can be, is something that it says submit, that our ordinance says it should be submitted with an application of this kind, so.
But I think the applicant did submit what they felt like was that information with their application.
Did you feel like you had a full analysis of integrity?
It was all the newspaper articles and every permit that was available for public knowledge to grab. We started this process back in October, and we're now in February. We've been submitting stuff since then for it, and we've been in contact with Miss Yoon in her office since we initially started this process of saying, hey, we need to redo this garage because it doesn't meet our needs, and we knew we had to do this first. So every piece of information we've got, we've researched, we paid for archive files, we went through all the microfiche, and everything that's out there, that's public knowledge that we have that we can find has been submitted.
And the application was accepted by staff. That's complete, I'm assuming. Okay.
I would still continue it for at least code enforcement.
Make your motion.
So I guess what I would say is I made a motion that we take no further action. If there's no second.
I second it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. So from here, we just take a vote? We have, what?
Discussion and then vote.
Okay, well, let me first, we do have a motion by Board Member Hare.
No,
Payanissa, and a second by Board Member Hare to go with recommendation number 2, to take no action and allow the property owner to proceed with standard building permits procedures and remove the home from the Class 3 list for historic designation. So, any more discussion on that? Okay, I will call the question. All opposed? All in favor? Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
3 ayes and opposed. What do we do with a split vote?
It's a dead ball.
A what?
It's, a tie does not go to the runner. Somebody could bring that motion up again, but it does not pass with a tie vote.
So what does that mean?
So now somebody else would make a new motion.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
I move
Sorry,
that
I
we
was
continue.
using sports metaphors. There's no place here.
Okay.
I move that we continue the discussion until we at least have the code enforcement. And potentially we have a 7th member or or we are down to 5 or 7 and can do have a positive vote.
A quick question, as a homeowner, and this is for HSPB, the board, how does anything that's been pulled up in code enforcement have any outweighing in HSPB? Like we're trying to decide if it's historic, if there's a, what do they call it, a code enforcement thing. How does that relate to making a decision on tonight?
Just the information that we would get may perhaps provide, some of us don't feel like we have enough information to make a determination
And I don't think
that it's not a historic resource.
I don't think it's going to give you any more information.
But we don't know that.
I already, just by Googling, I already found historic aerials of this property for 20 years. So
So we make a new motion.
Yeah.
What happens if we tie on that? Do we keep going till
To continue?
We keep going until there's a motion can pass.
All right, well,
A motion to continue pass.
well, you gonna go ahead and make it?
I move that we continue this matter until the next meeting.
Well, that may not be the next meeting, until the code enforcement.
Until the code
case
enforcement case is
Provides more information.
provides more information.
Do we have a sense of the timing on that anyway? For
I
the
already
spirit of the
asked. She said she
homeowner
didn't know.
I don't have
is
that information.
burning time and money
Yeah.
waiting.
I don't have have that information at the moment, so I would have to touch base with the code enforcement since.
Can we
that case
request
happened today.
a revisit in the next meeting in the spirit of the homeowner has an investment to manage and that money is time?
We could continue to a date certain and
Okay.
then provide you with information that we've acquired since then.
I move that we continue to a date certain, which would be the next meeting, and make an evaluate and make a, take a, or yeah, that. Or our next meeting? Yeah,
Yeah, the date
that
certain
qualify?
for the next meeting would be March 3rd.
to March 3rd. When we might have an odd number of people as well, even if no other information.
Can board members bring information forward at meetings, or is that not?
We could confirm that.
Yeah, I would want to check with city attorney.
Yeah.
Certainly, board members are welcome to use their own discretion to
Yeah,
do research on
right,
any item
right.
before them. Whether it was going to be presented, I'd have to look at the kind of Brown Act to know if it needs to be part of the record.
Yeah, that's understandable. So we do have a motion then to continue this to the next meeting. And then we may or may not have information on the code enforcement case by then. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion by Board Member Mashka Hitchcock, a second by Board Member Bachman to continue to the next meeting for further discussion and perhaps, hopefully, more information. Okay, all in favor of that motion? Opposed?
Opposed? Are you opposed?
No, I'm sorry, you said opposed, yes. I'm opposed.
Do we order pizza now?
Yeah. I'm not sure what to do. I don't think we're gonna. Yes. you have a
If
suggestion.
I could just, obviously, my feelings are all now on this. And I would just simply like to remind all of us that our responsibility here is really a tough one. And none of us, even the three of us who voted for this, are, I think, I'm speaking for myself, but that none of us are really taking these responsibilities lightly. And I've spent a career in historic preservation, and I'm very proud of what I've been able to do. So to vote to allow something with a, yes, potential, as has been pointed out, to have some sort of significance that might alter its class is a big step for me. It's not one that is just done very lightly. However, I have to say that when it comes down to the bar that needs to be met, that we are hopefully in, say, a more thorough historic site review could find, that bar seems to me to be very, very high. And again, I feel like this commission has capital, and we spend that capital when we make decisions. And I don't feel like this is a good use of spending our capital to keep this for another meeting. So that's just kind of the way that I look at it. And I am I mean, when it comes to historic preservation, I'm a purist, which may be neither here nor there.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, but if you look at this, it says class 1 or 2. And for me, there's the bar goes down for a class 2. And if you read the ordinance, integrity is actually not, I mean, if Sarah actually has the language, it's not a consideration for a class 2 resource. And if you have more information to understand what this building is in the body of their work and within that community, from that time period, it's possible we may say no, period. It's also possible we may say it's definitely not class 1, but it is for class 2. So we have to, that's part of our responsibility. It's not just setting the bar, and being purists. Class 2 is a little bit of a different animal.
Could I just say one word, please? Or one, first of all, you guys, it's just amazing how much work you guys put in, and I know this is all volunteer, and I appreciate how seriously you're taking it. We take it seriously. We've been homeowners in Palm Springs since 2012. We love this community. We love the history. We go around and look at the famous houses with our friends. And also, we would like a house that works for us, and we need a bigger garage. And, I've been up in that community a long time. I've never heard anyone talk about this house. There's big, important houses in Palm Springs, and there are ones that are significant. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time looking at this house. I would love for it to be important. I'd love to own an important house. I'd have a lot of pride in that. We're going to take care of it either way. We're going to do what's best for the house. You can't really see it from the street. It's not super visible. I just don't think that there's much to be gained for the city by any other designation or any prolonging of the process.
Going back to what I said before a little bit, and that is, if it is an Albert Frey, and Catherine can jump in on this, is that enough to make it a class 2? To stop the process? I mean, or are we gonna have to find something else? The integrity is off the table. I'm not that well versed for class 2. Is there enough?
Again, we don't really have a full understanding of.
What would we need to make it a class 2 beyond it's a Clark Frey?
Oh, I'd need a better understanding of the construction history of the property, in terms of, like you said, there were aerials that you can see, we've been told that it's, but sometimes a building permit is, it's not that substantial.
It's
things that have been
add a
done.
wing, add a bedroom, add a bathroom, change this.
And a lot of historic properties have enclosed porches or balconies. That's actually pretty common, and that doesn't knock things out. And a brick wall in the front doesn't touch
part of it, yeah.
When Sarah did her presentation, I thought I heard her say that it being those architects in and of itself was not enough. It would have to be something they did and significant to their body of work.
Right, and we don't have that information.
If it is, no, not, it is a Clark and Frey, and one of the reasons that these properties like this are significant is because there was so little development that occurred in Palm Springs between the years of in the pre-war years, or between 1919 and 1941. And Clark and Frey did this type of work also in properties like in Smoke Tree Ranch, which are we've looked at those. They can be kind of nondescript, sort of unassuming houses, but they constitute a very important resource in the history of the city. And I think that this could absolutely be qualified as a Class 2 because it reflects that. This building was constructed just after they did work in I think they did work in Smoke Tree Ranch.
Sure.
And this is a difference that even though we've seen the predominant architectural style for for residences is like has in this era is like Spanish colonial revival. I think this could be absolutely a relatively rare example of their work outside of Smoke Tree Ranch in this style, and I think it could absolutely be Class 2 and be rare, but we don't have an understanding of the comparative value of this resource.
Are our decisions appealable?
Yes, they are.
So if we did not go with the recommendation number 2, the property owner can appeal our decision.
That's correct.
Which one is 2?
We don't have a
2.
decision yet.
No, I know, but I'm just want to know what their recourse is if.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of time and effort for a lot of people.
Which one was number 2?
To take no action. It was your motion.
So while Sarah's looking that up, I have 2 things. One is if this garage was connected, I might feel differently. But the fact that it's a detached makes me want to be more flexible. The other thing is I feel like I have to say the fact that code compliance kind of threw out there that there's an issue, but we're not going to tell you what it is. I'm frankly a little miffed at that. Because I think it's kind of thrown.
I think that we don't want to address information that is partial at this point in time, and a full investigation hasn't been completed. There's nothing really to tell us right now tonight. I don't think anybody's keeping anything from us.
I'm having a very, I agree with your assessment of that. But what I'm trying very hard to make a connection from my past experience is to find out, is to decide quite how any kind of code discrepancy would impact any discussion this evening. I mean, waiting for it to find out what that is just doesn't seem relevant.
I don't think the motion was to do that. That was my suggestion. I think the motion was to continue this to a date certain and perhaps have more information either that we could do on our own, or we will have 7 members.
No, that was part of the motion, to wait for code compliance.
It was my original motion, and then I amended it to say that to be to a date certain and not just indefinitely until code compliance.
We may or may not have more information by that date certain, but if it allows for additional research, even if we did it ourselves, and it allows for potentially
an odd number
But we
of
don't
members.
have a ruling yet from the city attorney on whether that is possible.
Under what is possible?
Doing personal research and bringing that in.
Oh, no, you could keep it to yourself.
Yeah, well, that's true, but how do
But
you?
it would still might sway your personal
But
opinion, but
if you have to keep it to yourself, you can't use it in any
Yeah.
kind of discussion.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. 'cause
And we
I'm-
are speaking only of the garage.
Yeah.
Yes.
To me, though, that's an
that we're talking
extremely
about.
important character-defining
I
feature of the
agree,
property.
But it's not the rest of the house.
But that's not necessarily what's under consideration. What's under consideration is whether this merits
Yeah, that's not-
reconsideration for Class 1 or Class 2 designation. It's triggered by any major alteration. It's not specific to the garage or not.
If you told us it was triggered because of the age of the home and the scope of which the garage is going to be torn down, was going to be replaced with something over 500 square feet.
And
If
that
the
it was
gar-
in and it's in a survey.
It's
as
also in the survey.
If we found the
explicitly.
garage was not original, or that it was a carport, or if there were
Again, we don't know
photographs that
that either.
documented anything
Again, we don't-
addressing that, then
We don't
that's
know.
not, that's not that's a non-contributor then.
Well,
So I'm
see,
trying to-
again, we don't know.
We're just talking about the garage.
And that's
No,
why I
we're
go
not
back to my
talking
point.
about
Right,
anything.
we're
not talking about the
Photos
Right,
are
right,
not
but
out
the
there.
subject of
photos aren't
demolition
out
is
there
the
at all.
garage, and whether it's,
But that, I would go back to my point is, as a detached, the integrity of the house in whatever kind of, how much integrity there is with, it maybe its original design, and we know the windows have been changed, the roof's certainly been changed. Because I go, based on what you're saying, it reinforces that as a detached, to take no action lets them replace the garage to something that's more useful for them. Correct me if I'm wrong, that does not allow them to make a significant change to the house.
They could.
If we
Down the line,
remove-
they could do
If we
whatever they
recommend
want.
that they remove it from the list, then it doesn't, they could demolish it.
They never
Not-
get
Not
it,
that
yeah.
I'm suggesting that you would, but
would never
that's
go
what I'm
through any
saying
review.
is that exactly, the consequences of the decision to remove it from class 3 from even the class 3 designation is that it doesn't come before us again.
Okay, and that, what you're saying makes sense to me. Can we make the decision to not remove it from a class 3 and allow them to tear down the garage?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's on the
Good idea.
table.
Can we put it on the table?
I don't think that's in our
We've been
purview.
working on this since October, and there are pictures.
Yeah, they submitted.
There's pictures of the house from like 2010 and 2016, but there's not pictures from 1940, 1950, 1960. There's a great picture of the woman who owned it donating it to the hospital to be sold, but it's a woman in a wheelchair at a hospital. But I've looked for months.
Well, where do we go from here? We have tied vote.
Both times.
Tony?
For two different motions, we have a tied vote. What is the option?
Call Peter on the telephone. and
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think through everything that's been discussed and see if there's some amenable pathway I can think of that could garner 4 votes.
It seems to me that in other bodies that I've come in contact with, that, and I guess it doesn't apply here, but in other words, if it's a tie vote, then the recommendation stands, except the recommendation is we have to decide. So that leaves us in with a conundrum.
Well, just, if criterion 1, I realize, not criterion, the recommendation 1, I'm definitely hearing at least 3 people feel like no way, no how. But on the other hand, the city would initiate it and pay for it, and it doesn't have to take 120 days. It could be done quickly with a consultant on the list, and then we're,
can we do that?
no more code enforcement, that doesn't matter. Yeah,
Can we, because that's my
because then all the
issue
research will
is
be done that we're asking for by
holding
a
the project.
consultant on the city's team that are all qualified and meet the professional qualification standards.
But I thought that was only available if you were going for class 1.
No,
No?
no, because you go for all nominations proceed with a class 1, but the conclusion can be a class 2 or nothing. So maybe that might, in a way, be the most expeditious. I know it's time, but it doesn't cost them money, and it's faster than delaying it to a date specific and then figuring out what to do from there.
It's the way we'll get the information.
You'll have all the information you need. Sarah, you want to say something?
for the clarification of the report, so yes, the city does take the expense for the report. We do use an on-call consultant with the city. If a designation proceeding is initiated, due to the new fee schedule that's been adopted.
The new what?
The new fee schedule that's been adopted by city council, the applicant would need to take on the fees related to the processing of the application.
I thought that that was only for historic districts.
It's for sites and
Anything, wow.
We already got
The other
fee
thing
given
about-
to us too, by the way. We don't know what it's for.
The other thing about that is when we have asked for these reports, it's always been because we were pretty certain that this really did meet the class 1. We just wanted verification. I have a hard time kind of jumping to the aspirational class 1 designation for this particular property. And to force a
Yeah, I
a
understand.
fee is.
Yeah, that's new, we were not.
So, I guess I would like to remake my motion, hopefully, with all this discussion, that we take no further action and refer the permit application to the administrative process.
I second.
Okay, we have a third motion by Board Member Panessa, a second by Board Member Hare to recommend option number 2, take no action. Proceed with standard building permit procedures and remove the home from the class 3 list of eligible sites for historic designation. Okay, call for the vote. All in favor? You know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting to oppose.
All in favor? Anybody else? Opposed?
No
A
abstention.
question, what is the fee? That now the owner is going to be responsible for
Well,
our
that would be
imposition.
if it
Yeah.
were to proceed with designation.
Yeah.
What does that mean when a home is designated as a class 2 or 1 for us as owners? I don't know what that means. Like, I mean, outside, does that mean we have to open our home to?
No.
No.
What does it mean? I don't understand what it means.
It's mostly honorary, but it means you could apply for the Mills Act and get a
Tax credit.
60% off on your property taxes.
Yeah, I thought it's to the state of California, it has to be considered a class 1.
Nope.
Just designation.
What is the fee?
Hold on just a second.
When did that change? That the
Remember
responsibility,
we
the
had
financial
this-
responsibility shifts to the owner, not to the city?
It was just a couple months ago.
Okay.
December 1st, when the new fees were adopted by city
We
council.
mentioned it.
Yeah, I vaguely
We
remember, but I
didn't
couldn't
talk
remember
about it
exactly.
because it was nothing that came before us.
And just to put another human face on it, in addition to the fee, it kicks our project that we've been trying to do for a while now out even further, which I understand is not the primary concern of this committee, but, you know, there are people and people's lives here and everything. I don't know if anyone's caught, there's been some inflation, so everything keeps getting more and more expensive and takes longer and longer. And, you know, to bring it back to a human element, we'd really like to
So the
just
fee
get this
for
moving.
processing class 1, class 2 designations is $4,364.
We didn't have anything to do with it.
The increases that were set across the board for,
It was a study done citywide, or
And there was already a
We
$3,000
already paid a $3,400 fee that we don't know what we got for. They said you have to pay this for it to move forward in the city. So I paid it.
that is for this review as a class 3 major alteration.
I see, when I asked for, nobody, I just learned what it's for. Nobody in the city's told me, never requested why I had to pay
So that
fee.
that
They
would
said for it to
be
move
over
forward.
$7,000 then to
Yeah.
just keep this thing going.
May I try to, I have a number of thoughts that I'm going to try to string together in some fashion. We're talking about a house which has lost a great deal of its architectural integrity, it seems to me, over the years. Which cannot be brought back unless you want to rebuild the whole house. We're talking about potential code issues which have very little to do with the two of you. As an architectural historian who has worked with historic districts and some individual houses and taught this for years, if somebody were to say to me, this is a colonial revival, I would think, really? I'm a little hard pressed to think there's very little about it that seems colonial revival to me at this point, given all the changes that have occurred. Somebody used the phrase colonial revival.
No, I said Spanish colonial revival, and I said that it explicitly wasn't Spanish colonial revival.
Because it certainly isn't. Thank
No,
you.
it's definitely not.
So I'm not sure whether getting more information and knowing about code violations from whatever decade makes it, maybe that's not even relevant anymore.
Yeah, I'm curious, I hate to put staff in an awkward position, but we've never been in a situation where we were given both options for us to choose.
Yeah, what's your primary option?
So why weren't we given a recommendation from staff?
I don't, yeah, mine
I only
doesn't.
have
There's one on the
option
agenda.
On the agenda has just one.
I just have one on.
Oh,
Yeah.
hold on here.
Staff report has both.
It's different. The agenda and the staff report
Oh.
are different.
That's why I said originally that, you know, I was following the staff recommendation because that's what's on the agenda.
That's not the one. Sorry, that's not it.
I'm just picking up my paper.
Yeah, I would say that the agenda should have included both options, and I would ask the board not to assume that the agenda is dispositive of a staff position.
Because it just feels like it put us in more of an awkward position than we have been in the past to make the, because especially if what you said, would that be the case if the staff made one recommendation and we were in a tie, that it would go to the staff recommendation?
That's the, which, yeah, these are the two options. Yeah.
I couldn't, I can't verify that it automatically goes to the staff recommendation in terms of a tie break. I can verify that, I don't recall that being.
I've texted the city attorney, but, yeah, it's.
So I have a
Hoping
question.
he looked at his phone.
On other boards I've been on, when there is a tie, like on the appeals board, it went to the appellant, but you're saying in this case,
Well,
it
in
doesn't
the
go to
appeals
anyone.
board, it's a little bit of a different situation because there is a charge being leveled, I guess, and that's not the case here.
But they can, so, I mean, are we literally being told we can't leave till we?
I'm not trying to chain you to the chair.
I mean, and if you know, if
Hold
we-
on here. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Update from the city attorney. If there's a member who's absent, I sometimes see them continue it until a meeting where that person is back. We have an odd number.
Is it also possible if we did continue to the next meeting that we can ask for a staff recommendation?
Certainly can ask for one.
In the hopes that there is more information gained in their process of making the recommendation.
I don't know how
Staff
that's
isn't
gonna
gonna
come
do
from.
that.
Yeah, so exactly, yeah.
Otherwise, a tie
How will
vote
they
usually
change
results in no
their-
action being taken.
Two options
And what
to
does that
one.
mean?
So
Well, in this case.
according to at least the agenda, no action means they proceed.
I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think no action meaning there's nothing that moves, like no decision is being made. No action is a decision that's being.
But what does that mean for them and for this property? I don't.
Does that mean they have to pay this fee?
No, it wouldn't be, no,
coming
because we
back
didn't
and-
vote to do that.
The only way that that fee would be potentially initiated is if you took the vote to stay the project, initiate historic preservation proceedings, and then when the report came back with a recommendation for designation, then that designation application would be what would be feed. That would be
But
processed.
if the motion was recommendation 2, with a vote of 3-3, which was done twice.
So if that's the tie, take no action, or no action is the default. What does no action mean? Does that no action mean that we take that is no action happening the same as deciding to take no action?
It is not.
No, it's not the same.
It is not the same.
So what is, what does it mean if we did not take an action?
In the hopes of getting a larger or an odd number board to get a vote that would be more decisive?
Or smaller.
Or what-
No, I don't know what that means. Like I said, if it's a tie,
Okay.
what does that mean for the applicant?
I don't know, but I would hate to be Peter coming back and having to make a tie-breaking vote.
I think give us just a
I was
moment.
gonna step out and have a quick phone call with the city attorney.
Okay.
Can you
Thank
also
you.
ask them that, because it seems that the code enforcement's brought up for this proceeding, that should that even be on the table? Because, I mean, at this point, it's been brought up, and people are using it as reasons to not vote a specific way.
Actually, we're not at this point.
So-
Particularly if we do recommendation 2, we're not considering the code
Okay.
enforcement.
So
And
I just don't know
even
what that
for the other option, because, we're not so sure that that's going to accomplish what we need or what those of us who voted nay.
I'd like.
Should we wait for him to get back?
Yeah.
Okay. He's gonna clarify with the attorney on the voting proceedings.
I keep thinking, what would be worse? To find out that we allowed the demolition on something we shouldn't have, or to hold it and get him more information. The long view is, if I would feel worse if we said, take it down, and then we find out we shouldn't have. We can't go back.
How are you gonna find that out?
Was a two-car garage a normal thing in 1940?
That's a good point, because it was not from my understanding, and yet we can't prove it, but yeah, it was not. It was unusual to have a two-car garage enclosed. But we can't prove it.
I think that's gonna be the story of this house, that there's a lot of things that aren't, could be, maybe, possibly, but what is actually known is what's known, which isn't a lot.
What do you like on your pizza?
We were moving so well.
Boy.
Two sets of the Three Musketeers.
Well, maybe he'll come back from the city attorney with something that'll be helpful.
If he's not at the movies or something.
My concern is that it gets continued, and then at the next meeting, there's no more information, somebody else is gone, it's still, this could be Groundhog Day forever.
Well, we wouldn't do that. We'd figure it out somehow.
Well, one way around it is to have a report done and force the issue, get the information and call it thumbs up or thumbs down. And a professional report would provide more information than we have at this point.
Right,
And I
but
appreciate
then-
all that you've done, but there are people who can go deeper and farther.
Yeah, except they have to pay for it.
That I'm totally,
they
as an
don't.
architect,
They
I'm
don't.
totally on their side on that.
No,
Yeah.
they would have to, if, they don't have to
They-
pay for the report.
That's correct.
They have to pay for a class 1.
The designated.
Still
If it was
another-
designated, if the report came back saying, this has been altered, it's
So
not
their cost is
eligible.
time then.
Garage isn't
It's
original.
not the
Then we go your way.
No, what I hear you saying is that they only have to pay if it goes to class 1? That doesn't.
No, class 1 or 2. If it goes to a designation,
Right,
And that's what
then
this
they have to
report
pay.
showed.
then,
But not, recommendation number 1,
Yeah.
the city pays for the report. So
Not
the re-
under the new fee structure.
Yes, it does. They pay for the
Okay.
report. They don't pay for the designation.
And the mailing, and the designation review process is what would be under the applicant's
So
responsibility.
that would get triggered after.
So
Yes.
is that, what, so say the report comes back that this could be a 1 or a 2, does the homeowner have the option of not accepting the designation?
Not under the ordinance.
The ordinance
That's-
is
So we would
structured
be-
so that you are initiating the designation proceedings. And so if that report comes back as a negative, this does not meet the criteria, then it would stop
There.
the initiated process.
But if it comes back that it does,
It still has to
And
be
it goes
voted on
through
by
the
city
process
council.
like we
doesn't
did
it?
with 608 this point, for this
Okay.
item.
all of this is just making me more firm in my position.
Yeah, I agree. I bet Peter would be on your side.
I'm just concerned that, yeah,
We're all on record.
Yeah,
just
we're all-
remember. That doesn't mean you can't.
no, it's just a matter of which is the worst answer, requiring more effort and money, time and money for potentially damaging something we wish we hadn't. And just because we don't know doesn't make me feel better.
Or we'll never know.
So but time and money of the homeowner is huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
That's-
I totally understand frustration with processes.
Deep cleansing
Just
breath.
when we sing and dance, or
Yeah.
what's the deal?
The city attorney decided while I was gone. Hi. So, city attorney's recommendation, as a potential course of action, certainly at your discretion, would be to either continue it to the next meeting, when there might be either a full board or at least an odd number of board members. Alternately, you can adjourn the meeting and continue it to a special meeting, date certain, before the next meeting. And I guess we would have to hope that either 7 or an odd number, or anyways, yeah. So those are some other options.
Is Peter out of town, or?
He was in LA for the weekend, I know that.
I just think, yeah, some people might, we'd have to have 4 people at a special meeting.
For a quorum, you'd have to have 4.
Yeah, and it could be.
Yeah, if you have 2 and 2 of the current kind of thinking, that
Then
would
where
be
it's the
not
same
that
thing.
helpful.
But it does allow something to happen more quickly for the applicant. But I don't know, what's your pleasure, everyone? What does,
Well, I reluctantly, I would go for a date certain continuance, if that's the right term.
well,
But-
the date certain would be the next meeting.
No,
So-
no,
Oh,
no.
I'm sorry.
No.
Or a special meeting.
Yeah, so it could be continued to a date certain, the next meeting could also be adjourned to a date certain special meeting. You'd have to set that date.
Which we
at-
could do in 2 weeks,
You could do it
in a week.
on Monday.
Or
You
whatever.
could do it.
Well, don't you have to give us public notice?
Special meetings are a 24-hour notice period.
Oh.
I asked the city attorney that specific question because that was the first thing that came to mind.
I'm leaving on Tuesday for Egypt, and I'm not inclined to want to come back for a special meeting. So I would prefer that we have it a stay of 30 days until March 3rd.
It's actually 28 days.
Till our next meeting.
Till the next scheduled meeting.
Regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
Rather than, 120 days.
I move that we continue this request until the next regularly scheduled meeting on March 3rd.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to continue this to the next meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board in March, and by Commissioner, Board Member Mashka Hitchcock, and a second by Board Member Bachman. I will call the question. All in favor of that? Okay, so now we have a 4-2. Okay, sorry for your
Yeah.
long process.
Well, I appreciate everything you did, it's cities, we all like them, we'd all like them to be easy to work with.
So what does that mean for the next meeting? So is there going to be more research that needs to be done, or is?
No,
so
we're just
everything
gonna
that's-
hope for the best with who's at the meeting, and
Can
we're
we
gonna,
request that everything that's been submitted actually be presented to you?
Yes.
Like all the microfiche that was there for 3 months?
Yes, been sent, and it will be uploaded.
That would be good.
okay.
And all the historic newspaper articles that were
Those are all.
also.
Those are all there.
Thank you. There was only a few of them. There was like 12 to 15 of
Yeah.
them. We did them. There was a lot.
Okay.
Do you need to finish the agenda?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, we still have like.
I'm so sorry, we need to
No,
actually finish the
right.
meeting. Well,
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for all
you.
your time. Okay, sorry. Where did I go with my script? Oh, dear. I got totally sidetracked on that one. Where's my script? My script? Oh, here we go. Okay, so we are moving on then to reports, requests, and comments. Do any board members have any brief comments and/or issues of concern? Anything you wanted to bring up? No? Okay. I think we're good.
You
May I
again.
just say one thing?
Yes. you may.
I would like to thank everyone for the discussion this evening, which I thought was frustratingly productive but civil and so I
And
appreciate that
I think
collegiality.
we all respect each other.
Yes.
Okay. Does staff have any comments for the board this evening?
Just a quick reminder, board recruitment period will be open starting in March. So March 1st through April 30th is when the clerk's office will open that recruitment period. So if there are any board members whose terms are ending and would like to reapply, and it would be online. And if there are others who wish to apply or who know may be interested, direct them to the city clerks.
That's it? Oh, wow. Late on that. All right. Then we will adjourn the Historic Site Preservation Board to its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026 at 5:30 PM. We will meet here in the large conference room at City Hall, 3200 Tacos Canyon Way. And thank you.
Thank you.